Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us this afternoon. We are live from California to the world to learn about making your virtual internship a real success. Thanks, everyone, for dialing in this afternoon. I know we have participants from literally around the world, so we thank you for your interest and your time. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. We will be recording this session, so if you have to leave early, if you want to watch it again, it'll be available online recorded. We will probably go past 3 o'clock a little bit since we do have quite a bit to cover. So if you're interested in watching it later, it'll be recorded. If you miss anything, it will be recorded. And if you have the time, please stay on until the end. If you'd like to ask any questions, we have the chat box on your screen. So please ask questions in the chat box and we'll address them as we go. If you see a question that you do like and you want to upvote it to make sure that it gets asked, click like on the question and it'll be upvoted and we'll answer it in turn. So thank you again and good afternoon. We are here to share our thoughts and to tell you how to make your virtual internship a real success. My name is Marvin Lopez and I am Director of Student Programs and Engineering Student Services. For those of you that may not know me, I came from industry and I've been on campus for almost 5 years now, and it's a joy being here. In my previous life, I came from industry, as I said, and I ran and managed a number of recruiting programs, college recruiting programs. And in my time as an engineer and in charge of university programs, I've hired dozens of students. So I know a little bit about this world. I'm so happy to share my experience in this space. With me is Tiffany Reardon, who will be co-hosting with me. Tiffany? Tiffany, are you with us?
Am I unmuted? Hi.
Yes. Hello.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Reardon, and I work with Marvin in the Center for Access to Engineering Excellence. And like Marvin, I've been working with STEM students for many years. And I'm here as a resource because I know many of you are doing research programs, and so REU programs and summer research programs. And so we want to make sure that we have, our words of wisdom and advice for those of you that are doing research or internships remotely this summer. So welcome. And please use the Q&A. We'll use the Q&A for your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible.
Thanks, Tiffany. I also know that when you registered, we asked you to please submit questions in advance. So we'll try to address as many of those questions as well through the conversation. And we've tailored a lot of the content to those questions that you submitted. So thank you. So why are we here today? We are here because a number of you have told us of all the amazing internships you'll be doing this summer. But however, you told us that as excited as you were, the internships will be virtual. They'll be remote, and so you'll be in a world that is unfamiliar, perhaps doubly unfamiliar if it's your first internship and virtual. So we wanted to share a little bit of what it's like to have an internship remotely, especially for us having been working remotely for a while. We can tell you what that's about. At the same time, I do want to acknowledge that a number of your peers have lost their internships due to the situation that we find ourselves in. And so we want to acknowledge that. And if you find yourself in that situation, please remember that there are still opportunities out there. We do know of companies that are hiring. We do know of companies that have transitioned and created new internships, albeit shortened sometimes, online. So make sure you leverage all the resources available to you to find opportunities. Handshake through our Career Center, LinkedIn, Indeed. There's lots of opportunities out there, so please, or come see us in ESS or reach out to us virtually in ESS or the Career Center to learn more about these potential opportunities. There's still time. So, but as you can see, a number of you are going to be interning in an amazing array of companies and organizations, everything from the Los Alamos Lab to Amazon to Genentech to Boeing, BlackRock, just about every industry. So we are delighted and pleased to see that companies have been thoughtful in continuing their internships, albeit remotely. Our roadmap for today, we are going to share a little bit about the purpose of internships and what they're about. Tell you a little bit about offers, success competencies and what it takes to have a successful internship regardless of virtual or in person. the difference and some differences between in-person versus virtual, other factors to consider. We'll talk a little bit, and I'll share some stories from my time of why interns sometimes fail, some last tips, some resources as well that we'll share with you, and again, after the opportunity for Q&A. So that is our roadmap for today. So we want to make sure that you're happy with this workshop and that we give you what you're looking for. So we hope that this workshop will be successful if you walk away more knowledgeable about your internship and what it takes to be to have a successful internship, more confident about your internship experience, and some actionable tips that you can walk away with and put into work right away. So at the end, we'll make sure that you tell us if we were in fact successful. Okay, so what is the purpose of an internship? So let me ask you first what you think. So I'm going to start a poll on what you think is the purpose of an internship. So let me start the poll. Internship. And I'll give you, I don't know, 30 seconds or so to, and there's no wrong answer. We're not tracking who answered what. So just, we're going to see what you think is the purpose of an internship. So here we go. Okay, we're at 55, 50, 70%, 85, 7. Okay, that's good enough. Let's leave it at that. Okay, so 84% of you said that it's for gaining, and I'll share the results with you. So 84% say that it's to gain and apply skills, 11% return offer, 3% to network, 2% to contribute, and none of you said it's for recommendation, and none of you said it's to have fun. So I'm disappointed by that, but that's okay. So put that away. So you're all correct. These, what I believe are the purposes of an internship. First and foremost, I think, is to get a return offer. So companies, for the most part, are looking at internships as an opportunity to hire students or to convert students to full-time, whether it's either for returning as an intern next summer or to full-time positions when you graduate. More and more companies are using internships for that purpose. And you could even think of an internship as sort of a summer-long interview. So returning offers is a key reason for a purpose of an internship. Gaining and applying skills, absolutely. That is, as you rightly point out, is another one of the top reasons why internships exist. But don't forget networking. That is a key piece and key purpose of an internship, building and nurturing the network of people that down the road could be of value to you in terms of references for other opportunities, to come back to this company, for other companies, for all kinds of things that you might want to pursue later. Building the network through an internship is critical. You want to contribute to the organization you're part of. You want to leave a legacy. It's really cool in my days when I hired interns to point out that some piece of work that we had, some project that was completed, was done by an intern. So aim for that contribution that people can point to and that you can point to. And don't forget recommendations. A key part of an internship is to be able to get a recommendation from your manager, from leadership of an organization, from your peers, even from other interns, both as a letter or in LinkedIn, which is a key place. And we'll talk about this in a minute about the role LinkedIn plays in your internship. And have fun. I know that we're in this world, we'll be remotely. You'll be doing the work remotely, but that's no reason why you should not have fun through your internship. Companies I know will put on events that, while not the same as a barbecue or the baseball games that they usually do, but we'll still try to create that community and that fun environment for all of you interns. So don't forget to have fun while you're doing this. So a quick word about offers. The types of offers that you'll be getting are either a full-time offer after graduation. So if this is your last summer as a student, their interest or the company's intention will be to give you a full-time offer upon graduation. So either December or when you finish in spring of next year, or an internship to return next summer. So those are the two types of internships that or return offers that you might get. You should know upfront from the company if this internship will lead, or if the intention is to lead to an offer, because it's a different environment and different mindset if you know that the end goal of this internship is an offer versus versus not. And also, if it is the intention is for an offer, understand what the performance criteria will be to get that return offer. So it's critical that you know those two going into the summer. Now, having said that, because these are shortened internships for the most part, I believe there's anything from even as short as 5 weeks to 8 weeks versus a typical 10 to 12 week internship. That may not be the case. That may not be enough time for a company to decide on an offer. Also, the circumstances we're in the job market, such as it is, they may not have the headcount ready at the end of the summer. So it's a little different this time around, but on the whole, know whether that the intention of this internship is to lead to an offer. And then some thoughts about deadlines. Be careful, and I put the link at the bottom because that is the link to our own page, our own website in the college, to understand our policies and our guidelines that we ask of our corporate partners in terms of recruiting students, and in particular around deadlines that that are given to you for your offers. And the main point that I want you to take away is that you don't feel obligated to accept an offer, certainly within days or even a week or two. We expect companies to abide by the policies on our webpage, which basically means that for a return offer as an intern, we ask that they at least give you 2 weeks to consider, and preferably give you a deadline of early September. And I know companies have pressured students in the past to decide within days or even a week. If you find yourself in that situation, one, I personally believe that they're inviting reneging. And two, come see us, either our partners at the Career Center or ourselves in ESS, and we'll work with you through that process and through the conversation, because we want to make sure that you're pleased with the process and that it's a win-win situation. So, but be mindful of that, the deadlines at this page. Okay, any questions, quick questions that have come up in the Q&A, Tiffany?
So one question we have is from Juan Kai. Juan asks, an important aspect of internships is to build connections. How do we start and build connections virtually?
Fantastic question. And I'll just say a quick word and then we'll get into more details in a minute. But in a normal situation, your manager would introduce you to people sort of organically as you walk around the halls in the building and meeting colleagues and such. In this context, you won't have any halls to walk around. You'll be at home doing basically what I'm doing. So again, your manager is still your friend, but have the courage. We want you to have the courage, or encourage you to have the courage to ask, who should you meet? Who do they think would be a good person for you to meet? What roles do the different people in your organization play, so that you can reach out to them and introduce yourself to them and start building those connections. Organization charts and directories of departments, divisions will be especially important for you. And then this will be your very good friends, because through those two documents, you will know who's who in this department that you can walk down the hall and meet. So figuring out who's who through org charts, through websites, through directories, and through your managers and mentors is critical to then reach out and offer, invite them to a Zoom coffee instead of a coffee that you would in person, because you won't be in the office. So hopefully that helps.
Zoom coffee.
Yes, Zoom coffee is the best. Okay, some competencies that we think are particularly useful in making your internship a success. And these are not necessarily tips, but just competencies that you should demonstrate and they should embody as you work through your internship. What's interesting, I think, is that these are universal. I don't think they differ in person versus virtual. The behaviors how you demonstrate them are a little different, and we'll get into that in a minute. But fundamentally, these are the things that make an intern successful. To me personally, in my time, having had dozens of interns, the two key ones at the top: being resourceful and taking initiative. Resourceful in the sense of you are hired not to be an expert, because you're students, not experts yet. And so they want you to come and solve problems through others and to find solutions to problems, not to solve the problems yourself. And so finding who to go to, where to go to, who to talk to, to build those teams and the collaboration to find the answer is key, and especially so being remote and taking the initiative. Really successful interns take the initiative to solve problems, to reach out to people, to take on problems without being asked, especially. And I think those two initiatives or competencies are especially important. The two that kind of go together, and we'll talk about this in a little more detail, are professionalism and communication. They kind of go together in my mind, and those are just the basics in my mind to get, just to have a decent internship. And the bottom line of professionalism and communication is basically be remembered for the right reason. And I can tell you, and I'll tell you some stories about those that have been remembered for the wrong reason. And finally, courage. And I think in this context and working remotely, courage is particularly important. And the courage, and we'll talk about that, what that means, but basically is the ability and the willingness to take risks. So we'll cover that in a minute, but first let's talk in more detail about each of these. So first, let's talk about professionalism and communication. Again, they kind of go together. And I know that in the social distancing world, a handshake is perhaps not the best approach, the best way to depict this, but you get the idea. So Tiffany, tell us a little bit about professionalism and communication.
So believe it or not, I think that a lot of students, when they first hear that their internship is going to be remote, they think, oh my goodness, how is this going to be different? But to be honest with you, in terms of professionalism and communication, there really isn't that much of a difference. So in your in-person internship, depending on where you're interning, you want to dress professional. Same thing goes with your Zoom internship. So remember, it is not a class. You're not attending a lecture via Zoom. So you want to make sure that you establish a routine. You want to have clean clothing. You want to comb your hair, no pajamas. You don't want to look like you just rolled out of bed. If so, if you have roommates, maybe, negotiating with them and so they know if you're on an important call, and have a designated workspace. I have a Zoom background, as you can see. I don't have this fantastic view. Things like that. Email etiquette. Email etiquette is something that all students, and we have some resources later on in the presentation to show you, but email etiquette is very important because you're going to have to communicate with a lot of different people that you don't have the luxury of kind of going to their desk and introducing yourself. You're going to be doing video conferencing, so you want to be active in video conferencing. And right off the bat, if you don't understand jargon, ask. There's nothing worse than you not knowing what a particular acronym means and not, asking that, especially when it's something that you really will need to know. And you can just solve that mystery by simply asking. So professionalism and communication. And very important, I also want to stress, and Marvin can definitely vouch for this, that you are representing not only yourself, but you're also representing UC Berkeley. And so the experience that this internship host has will probably make a difference on whether or not they recruit from perhaps your department, your student org, or your school. So we really want to, make sure that you realize that you are representing the College of Engineering, and that's an important thing.
Thanks, Tiffany. And something that I want to double emphasize is, and because I've seen how Zoom classes have been handled and the behaviors that I've seen relative to classes, the meetings you'll be in typically would be in a meeting in a conference room or in somebody's office or in some setting and a workplace. And we'd ask you to speak up, don't use your phone, sit upright, be engaging. And the same exact thing applies in a Zoom version. So it is not your college lecture. So don't think that because it's a Zoom tool that it's you can treat it as a college lecture. You don't take a meeting from your bed, which I've seen students taking classes from bed. And all the other, everything else that goes with that you've seen and done in Zoom that is not, does not apply to this. Also, relative to email etiquette and communication in general, email is not text. So the workplace is still in sort of formal, or at least more formal email etiquette. So there's no text speak. So there's no LOL, no OMG. All the things that are funny on campus and the things that we use on campus don't apply in the workplace. So this is it's still more formal and more professional, even for a startup. So it's still not, it's not the same as campus. So thank you for that, Tiffany. Also, we wanted to point out the workspace. You know, in an in-person internship, you have an office or a cubicle, some sort of space that you would ideally keep clean. Certainly lab space you would keep clean. In a virtual environment, we wanted to remind you to please find a designated workspace somewhere in your apartment, your house, wherever you may be, that is your space, that you will designate as your space, where people know that if you're there, it's because you're working, you may be on a Zoom call, and you want to keep it clean, presentable, and free of interruptions. That's especially important. You've seen all the videos of, well, very interesting incidents on Zoom, so try to minimize those of your roommates and dogs and children showing up. Try to keep it as, and I know it's challenging, but make every effort to keep that as clean and professional as possible. Now, Tiffany, tell us about resourcefulness.
So resourcefulness, so finding resources to solve problems. So all of you are engineers, and that is your area of expertise, is solving problems. So how do you be resourceful as an intern, as a researcher in an REU? These are things, again, there's not really much difference between the in-person experience and the virtual experience. Some of you, I've talked to a couple of students, and some of the internships have started actually this week. But for most of you, I think it's going to be probably early June. With that said, you should do your research on the company or the lab even before the first day you start. Talk to other interns. You know, maybe there's other people who have interned there. Talk to them about their experience. As Marvin said earlier, the org chart is your friend. Go in the org chart. See what the chain of command is. See what the other units are. See what the units that you actually might be you know, interacting with. Don't be afraid to ask questions. In person, virtual, ask questions. Be a sponge. Think positive. It's not if it can be done, it's how it can be done. You are all engineers, you all have the aptitude, and you all have the skills and talent. And I would add a couple things. One is that if you are doing an internship and maybe perhaps it's been cut short, because I know that has happened with some, you know, ordinarily it might be a 10 or 12 week, maybe it's a 5 or 6 week. Ask if you could potentially work on a side project. That would be something, if I were, you know, working with a student, that I would be really impressed by them taking that initiative and doing, and also having something tangible. You're really turning a situation into something that, you know, is kind of left better off because of your contributions. Also, in terms of talking to other students, this is where LinkedIn comes in. We have actually compiled a listing of all of the interns that, you know, are interning this summer, and you'd be very surprised at how many other people are also interning at these companies. So utilize each other and check out on LinkedIn.
Thanks, Tiffany. And I just want to reemphasize that you are being hired not to be an expert. You're not experts yet, because you will be, but you're not yet. You're being hired to find the answer, either with your peer interns or colleagues or somewhere, but that you come together and you find the solution and the answer, not necessarily have it in your head. And that's the case now as an intern and as a professional. So practicing that now is critical, and demonstrating your resourcefulness now is critical. Initiative. This is the idea of solving problems without being asked. And this is something that I value enormously in the interns that I had. You do not want to be the intern that sits in your office, or, you know, in this case, sits at home, waiting for a problem to be handed to you, waiting for an issue to come to you, or waiting to be asked to do something. Do it. Now, in this context, how do you find that? You can't walk down the hall. You can't have lunch or coffee or sit in the kitchen. Again, the org chart, the directory, your manager, your mentors are your key friends. They will tell you who has what kinds of projects, what kinds of issues, what kinds of opportunities out there that you can handle, that you can take on and you can volunteer for. So when you join project meetings, team meetings, normally you'll be in a conference room. In this case, you'd be on Zoom or some other conferencing tool. Turn your cam on and speak up. Make yourself visible, because remember, they haven't seen you before. They don't know who you are. So if you're without the cam, you don't exist. Without speaking up, you don't exist. So make yourself visible and offer your knowledge and your energy, especially energy, your insight, to take on problems without being asked. If you hear of a problem that somebody has and you say, hey, I can help you with that, do it. Managers love nothing more than seeing an intern take on things that they have been trying to take on, or that nobody's has taken on. Take it on and figure out how to solve it later. So Richard Branson says something, the best way to be an expert at something is volunteer for it and learn how to do it later. So go for that. Manager and mentor meetings. Typically in person, you would have at least a weekly, bi-weekly meeting with your manager and or your mentor. Make sure that you have and take the initiative to schedule manager and mentor meetings, whether it's on Zoom or some other tool, but make sure you have those calls. Don't wait for them to include you in a call. In an in-person situation, you would have, lunch and learns, tech talks. They'll be available on Zoom. I guarantee you that companies will still have the tech talks and the intern events and the leadership conversations in Zoom. Make sure you attend. If you're curious about something, and normally you would go down somebody's office and ask, right? What do you work on? Tell me more about what you do. In this situation, in the virtual world, same thing, but just schedule a Zoom meeting. It's a little more formal, so it takes a little more courage, but same idea. If it's something that that's interesting about what they do, about their title, their background, schedule a Zoom meeting and ask. People love to be asked about what they do, what brought them to what they do, what do they care about, and they'll share. And especially, I think people will be particularly mindful that interns will have an especially challenging process or especially challenging experience. So they'll be more than happy to chat with you if you take the initiative to chat with them. Courage. This is not me, by the way. So this is a stock picture from the internet. I couldn't possibly have that kind of courage. But take risks. A big part of an internship is really taking the risk to solve and take on things that you wouldn't otherwise do, to go outside your comfort zone. And to Tiffany's point, as we were putting this together, we realized that so much of these behaviors are really the same in person versus virtual. Asking tough questions, and tough questions about what, you're wondering. Tough questions about why a company does what they do. Why is this process the way it is? Why is this approach the way you do it? Do you have a different approach? That's why they brought you in, is to ask those tough questions from a different perspective. People you've been working with have been there a while, anywhere from a little while to a long while. So they've done what they've done. So ask the tough questions about why they do the things they do. Can they do it differently? Take the courage to speak up. In a normal environment, you would speak up at a meeting and you would sit at the table. Here, there's no table. It's a virtual table. So speak up in a Zoom meeting. Turn on your camera. I cannot overemphasize how important it is that you turn on your camera. Even if others don't, and I'm aware of companies where that's not quite what people do, that's okay. You do it. You have the courage. You're a Berkeley engineer. You have courage. You have initiative. Turn on your camera. Show that you care. Arrange coffee with top leaders and skip a level. So skip a level is a corporate speak for having a meeting with the person above your immediate manager. So 2 levels up. So typically in a company, you would have a regular meeting with your skip a level. So that's still the case. Arrange a Zoom meeting with top leaders. So if you have the courage, or take the courage to meet the VP of your division, the senior VP of your division, or director, and the skip a level. So your manager's immediate manager. And again, it's very unlikely they'll say no. And if they do, well, then move on to somebody else. But if they're very likely to do it, and you'll gain a lot of knowledge, a lot of insights, and visibility by doing that.
And I would also add, if you're doing a research program, I would add, make it a point to reach out to other PIs that might be accepting students for, graduate programs. If you're interested in that school, take the time to, just schedule a meeting. Just say, I'm doing research, although it's remote. I'd like to talk to you maybe about, some of your research, and here's what I'm doing, and I'll be possibly applying to PhD programs or master's programs for, fall 2021. There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, it'll make you stand out because in the in-person REU programs, we always tell students to do that. And once again, this hasn't changed just because it's virtual.
Absolutely. And something else is to ask for tough projects. If you find yourself, and my background is computer science, so back in my day, in my own internships, I started documenting code. At some point you have to do it, but it's not the most glamorous job. So if you want to do something more interesting or something, a tougher project, ask. Find out who has interesting projects that you might want to take on, and offer yourself and ask, can I join this team? Can I take on this project? Can I solve this problem for you? And you may or may not do it, which is my next point, is you may fail, but learn in the process. And that is the key. So don't just don't assume that it has to work, or it doesn't, or it's not good. It's okay to fail as long as you learn from that failure, but have the courage to ask for the tough project, have the courage to fail if you need to, and learn and move on. Any immediate questions, Tiffany?
We have a good question from Ariam Levine. Arian says, if we want to skip a level meeting, what would the subject of that meeting be? Good question.
Yeah, it's it's asking everything and anything about the individual and their division. So ask, what brought them to this company? What keeps them to this company? How do they get to the level they're at? What challenges do they face at that level? What keeps them at night in running the division, the department, the group that they're in? How can you as an intern help with the challenges they have? Where do they see themselves going, 5, 10 years? So think of it, immediate questions about them personally, and kind of move out from there about the role, their impact, and the challenges and the victories that they've had in their life. And people would love telling you all about that. So I think you just think of questions about that individual, what their role, the impact they have, and they'll be more than happy to share that. I hope that helps. Okay. All right, so it's time for a puzzle pause. We've been talking for a while, and we're talking about serious stuff for a while. So why don't we have a 30-second puzzle pause? I'm going to put up a puzzle, and I'll give you a chance to figure out the answer and vote for the answer, and then we'll see who gets it right. And the winner gets to say they got it right, I guess. We'll give you a virtual prize of some sort. So here you go. It's the next slide. And okay, so which number replaces the question mark in the bottom triangle? And I'll put up the poll. I'll launch it. Go here. We have a couple answers. Okay, I'll keep it up for 15 more seconds. So get in there quick. Okay, going once. Going twice. And we are closed. Okay. All right, so share the results. So 54% of you said it's 9. 36% of you said it's 8. And then 5% 4, if 5% 1. Okay. The answer is 9. So the solution is that the number in the middle is the bottom corner plus the difference of the other two numbers. So 7 minus 4 is 3, plus 9 is 12, 1 minus 1 is 0, plus 4 is 4, 6 minus 2 is 4, plus 5 is 9. So there you go. All right, hope you enjoyed our puzzle pause. Okay, additional competencies for a successful internship. These are other things you should be mindful of. And I think they're equally important. We just didn't have time to go into each one of them in great detail, but things you should be mindful of in demonstrating through your internship. Enthusiasm. And this is especially important in a virtual world. Show your enthusiasm for what you're doing. Show enthusiasm for the role you're in, the company you're in, the division you're in, the people you work with, your major, the fact that you're a Berkeley engineer. I don't need to tell you to be enthusiastic about that, but I'm sure, but just a reminder. Show enthusiasm in general about the work you'll be doing and the place you're at. And be vocal about it because they can't see you all the time. So demonstrate through your emails, through your communications, in particular on your Zoom calls. your enthusiasm. Curiosity. Nothing excites a manager and a team lead of interns that are curious. They ask questions about anything and everything. Again, why does this group do the things that they do? Have they thought of a different way of doing these things? What does the competitors do? The more questions, the better. There's no such thing as too many questions or dumb questions. So ask away. Collaboration. And this is something that is fundamentally different about the way we educate engineers, not we Berkeley, but in general, and the way engineers work. And someday this will be aligned, but in industry, collaboration is paramount. As you'll see, those of you that have had internships already know that working together is exactly how you get things done in industry. Our education system works, and the educational program is really focused on individuals, working kind of alone. Yes, in teams from time to time, but ultimately, you get a grade for your work. In industry, you get a grade, as it were, for the teamwork, for the collaboration. So show that you can work as a team, that you can be a team player in addition to a team lead, and even before you're a team lead. And ultimately, innovation. Think outside the box. Remember, they're bringing you in because you have a fresh perspective on things. So think outside the box, offer outside the box solutions to potential problems that they may have. Thoughts on that, Tiffany?
I agree. I think that in every single one of these, you can demonstrate all of these things. For example, emails. A lot of people tell me, wow, you're so friendly in your emails, right? If you've gotten an email from me, you're probably laughing because, that's by design. If you have, kind of quick, short, one answer, thanks, got it, emails, kind regards, maybe have a nice closing. Collaboration. If you've met with other people, new ideas. I can't stress enough, if your internship has been shortened, maybe ask if it's possible for you to work on a side project, or work on something, or maybe assist another research group. Really offer yourself, and that goes about you'll never know unless you ask.
Thank you. Any salient questions to address before we move on?
Yes, so we have a very important question two very important questions that we'll cover, but I want to double, bold, underline. One question is, does UC Berkeley regulate internships in any way, like doing two? So they're asking, I guess, if they should do 2 internships.
Great question. And we actually have a tip about that at the end, but we might as well address it here. No, we do not regulate internships. Internships are ultimately a relationship between you and the company they'll be working with. So we do not regulate how that works. We work with both parties to encourage you to have a win-win situation, but ultimately it's between you and the company.
I think the question they're saying is, can they do 2?
Right, which includes how many you take on. So theoretically, you could take more. However, we highly, highly encourage you to only take 1. And in particular this year, when you'll be doing this remotely, I guarantee you, if nothing else, that you will have some meeting that you have to be at for both internships at the same time. And you don't want that. But mostly it's about focus, right? It's about focus, and again, enthusiasm, curiosity, and all the things that we talked about. Can you truly be enthusiastic and collaborative and focused on 2 internships? To say nothing of energy and time. So I would highly encourage you that you only do 1. At least 1 at a time. If you find yourself where your internship is now half of what it was supposed to be, and you can do a second one, let's say for the latter part of the summer, that's more workable. But simultaneously, no, I would personally encourage that you only do 1. That's a great question.
Do 1 and do it very well. And a related question. So Daniel Kahn says, how do we choose between doing an internship this summer and doing summer classes?
That is a great question. Tiffany, any thoughts from you?
So I would say don't do both. Absolutely do not do both. I know from running REU programs that I will often tell students that you are not to take classes and do an REU at the same time. It's not fair to the research team. Similarly with an internship, again, we know that, you know, summer classes at the beginning, you know, it's doable, but then once it gets time to crunch time and finals, and the last thing you want to do is say, oh, I can't make this meeting because I have a test to study for. I mean, if you're getting paid to be in an internship, then you should do an internship.
I would agree. I think it's a question, again, of focus and energy. So can you truly focus on simultaneously on classes and an internship? And can you really have the energy to do both well? And don't forget, to Tiffany's earlier point, you're representing not only yourself, but the College of Engineering and UC Berkeley. So the less well you do either, the less you represent both, you know, represent yourself in the college less well. So I would encourage that you do one or the other. So now, which one is more important to you? That's a personal question, but I would encourage you that you only do one or the other. Okay, moving right along. Some additional tips that I think will try to address some of the things that came up in the questions through the registration process. And I think we've addressed the top row. Do not take classes at the same time and take only one internship. We did have a question, and you often see about LinkedIn postings, and you know, everybody posting that they've got this or that internship and what they're doing. So I would say yes, post on LinkedIn before you start your internship that you've got this internship, during the internship, and after the internship. But don't just post. Don't just boast. In other words, don't just say, "Look at me! I got this great internship." Post advice or learnings through this process. So if you got this great internship, how did you get it? What can others leverage from the process you followed to get an internship themselves? So was it through networking? Was it through reaching out to key people? Was it through having a great interview? What exactly did you do to get this internship? During the internship, if you solved some really interesting problem, if you learned some amazing skills, what exactly did you solve and how? Being mindful, of course, of confidentiality agreement. So don't divulge company secrets, but share what you've learned that others can gain from. And after the internship, same thing. What did you accomplish through this internship? Did you, and not just, hey, look, I got a return offer, but what contribution did you make? What legacy do you leave at this organization that others can learn from, that others can try to emulate? I guess going down the list here, ask. And not just for technology, but ask. Ask anything. Anything you may want or need, ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. You ask, you may get, but if you don't ask, you definitely won't get. And specifically, we were asked if you don't have the right technology, can you ask? Absolutely. Your company should be able to provide you at least a laptop to work on, a hotspot if Wi-Fi is not, you know, the best where you're at, or at least ideal for the work you'll be doing, and possibly headphones, noise canceling headphones, if you won't be in a quiet environment. They may not give it to you, but ask. I know that the least laptops are sort of a given. The others may or may not be, but ask. If you don't ask, you won't get.
Also, another quick tip is if you are working with a company that is, say, in California, right? You might assume that all the meetings are on West Coast time. Maybe just double check, right? So sometimes you might get, you know, invited to something that's on the East Coast, or, you know, so just make sure you're on time, because you don't want to say, oh, sorry, I'm late.
Right.
And none of you should, we cannot stress this enough, be on time, no Cal time. That's
right. We've been told by companies, some of our corporate partners that hire a lot, and luckily hire a lot of our engineers, that now Cal time is becoming a thing in their companies, because, you know, there's so many Cal Bears now that everybody shows up at Cal time. So you don't want that. And they come to us saying, well, you know, can you change that? And we say, well, it's sort of the culture, you know, it's hard to change. So leave the campus culture on campus. So, you know, in the professional world, you know, meetings start on time, not on Cal time, or any other sort of time. It's on time. On that note, and on the note of time difference, be flexible. That yes, we want you to have boundaries. We want you to know that you should be working, you know, regular hours, normal hours. But there will be times when you might have to dial into a call, you know, really early for East Coast folks, or even Europe, or late at night if it's a global call. And that's okay. It's part of what we do as professionals. It shouldn't happen too much, or it shouldn't be a regular thing, but you will have to at some point. You might have to. So, you know, kind of roll with those punches. Again, Having that enthusiasm for these kinds of challenges is what they're looking for. Going on our list here, research all about the company. Do not show up at your internship asking about this company. Asking, so what do you do? Tell me about the product. You should know as much as possible about the company, and if at all possible, about the particular division you're in, the department, the competitors. What are the other people that this company competes with doing? What are they? What's interesting about them? So that you have some fresh ideas and some perspectives to offer, and great questions to ask. Where would you find that out? I'm a big fan of finance.yahoo.com. If you look up any company there, you'll know exactly what they do, what their competitors, their latest news releases, stock price, just about anything about the company that would be useful for you to know coming in as an intern.
We have a related question from Ashley Zhang. So Ashley wants to know, how do I find the org chart? Is this something I ask my manager for?
Yeah, the org chart is something you would ask. You can ask now. Once you start, you're officially started, you can ask for the org chart now. They should be able to tell you. They should be able to give it to you at least when you start, and possibly even now. On the website, the public website, there should be at least some sense of the organization and the departments and divisions. But the detailed directories, that's something that exists internally. But yeah, you should be able to ask now. They should be able to tell you, give you at least a sense of what the organization is about. Great question. And hi, Ashley. Again, to the point of the work environment, so take breaks. And this is something that we in the staff, now that we've been working at home for 2 months now. We're constantly on Zoom calls just like this, just about all day long. So take breaks, get up from your chair and walk around, get some air, get some sun. Don't think you have to be, sitting literally at your desk the entire day. It's important that you get about and get some energy, get some fresh air, and re-energize yourself. Have some snacks, because it can be tiring. It will be tiring to be on Zoom or on the computer all day long. It is not the same as meetings in a conference room or with actual people. And similarly, let your family know and your housemates know what you're up to. That, when you're on the computer and from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, it means you're working. It means leave me alone. Don't throw a dog at me, or don't, whatever. Let you be, because you're in a professional environment, as unusual that may be, but you want to be mindful that others know that what you're up to in your workspace. Go ahead.
Question that I just want to quickly answer is, how much of this advice is relevant for an RU at a national lab? Absolutely, all of this advice is relevant. We have a number of students at Berkeley that are going to be interning at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and same thing. So, the Zoom calls, the participation, all of these things are very, very similar. And I would argue that working at a national lab is kind of the best of both worlds, in terms of it's kind of like working at an industry, but you're also working in a lab and doing research. Obviously, titles, very important in terms of professionalism, calling people, doctor, professor. Sometimes it is a little bit more formal in that setting. So I would, if you don't know the researcher, maybe just, start by addressing them as Dr. Zhang, or whatever their last name is. I think that's just a good rule of thumb. And then they might say, no, call me Ashley. Don't, that's not necessary. But wait for them to say that. I think that would be a good tip.
Absolutely. I think you're exactly right, Tiffany. Nothing of what we said is relevant only to industry. I think in the research world, even academia, if you're on campus, almost everything is exactly the same. The dress code may be a little different in the lab, and there's some maybe additional pieces about safety in the lab, but in terms of these behaviors are exactly the same regardless. Even a startup, this all applies. And to that point, over-communicate. Probably our last tip that we want to mention here is over-communicate. And by that, I mean, make yourself visible. If you're working remotely, it's easy to forget about you. It's easy to forget that you're an intern working at home. So over-communicate of what you're doing, of questions you may have, of things you're curious about, of opportunities you want to have for job shadowing and meeting others. Over-communicate what you're doing, what you're up to, and what you're curious about, because people they don't know you, and without seeing you, they'll forget. So do not be the forgotten intern. Over communicate the whole summer. Now, despite all these tips, sometimes interns fail. This is not you, of course, but it can happen, and I've seen it happen, sadly. So, why do you think that's the case? Let me open up our next to last poll about why interns sometimes fail. So, why do you think interns fail? Okay, we're moving along to 90%. Okay, I think it's all right. It's not popcorn now. We have just the last few kernels to go. So, okay, 5 more seconds. We'll close it out. Okay, so I'll share the results. And so 42% think is from under communicating, 28% is from never asking questions, 17 is from not delivering, 7 is from not getting along, and 6% is unprofessional behavior. Okay, so thank you for that. Let's put that to the side and I'll tell you. So these are in no particular order, but from my personal experience, I would say the number one reason why interns fail is actually unprofessional behavior. And I'll tell you a couple of stories about that. At a company that I was at running the intern program, we had an intern and we had office or company housing, and one of our interns decided to throw a big raging party with all his buddies and trash the place. And of course, the other interns told us because they weren't too happy. And we literally had to end the internship on the spot. So the party was on Saturday, on Monday, he was gone. You won't have that, of course, because you'll be at home. So there's no housing, company housing to trash. But that's one example. The thing you have to be very mindful in the virtual world is email communications. Do not send pictures, jokes, TikToks, emails, any of the things that are funny on campus. Do not send around through email, Slack, or anything else in your companies. That is considered unprofessional behavior. And that is when it starts, and if it starts slipping into sexual harassment and those sort of that kind of world, that will get you and terminated immediately. So unprofessional behavior is the number one, I would say, is the number one reason, or certainly one of the key reasons why interns fail. Not getting along with others, absolutely. Again, I can think of stories of interns that did not get along with others, didn't communicate or didn't work with others well, and the internship ended, or at least they were not brought back. Under communicating, probably not as egregious as unprofessional behavior, but it's something you want to be mindful of not communicating, and in particular in a virtual world. You want to make sure you have visibility so that when performance evaluation comes and return offer time comes, they know who you are. Similarly, never asking questions if you're just passive and quiet the entire summer and you haven't contributed any questions or haven't pushed the conversation in the envelope, that would also not go well. And not delivering. And by not delivering, I don't mean necessarily failing, because remember I mentioned that it's okay to fail if you learn. But if you don't deliver in the sense that you just don't have a plan for doing things, you don't have a sense of goals or of accomplishing what things that you wanted to, or making progress and working with others to get those things delivered, that would also not look good. So be mindful, be very mindful of the professional behavior in particular, along with the other things that we mentioned. Tiffany, any thoughts on your part?
If you're doing a research program, especially if that research program has been transitioned to a virtual program, generally speaking, they'll ask you to do a technical paper, a poster presentation, or even a virtual talk. I would be very, very surprised if they didn't continue that. They, meaning the program, the REU program, most likely has a deliverable to their funding source. So again, it goes along with being professional and delivering. If those are the expectations, be sure that you meet those guidelines and understand what those are. And then again, I can't stress enough, if you're taking classes or if you're doing internships elsewhere, you won't be able to deliver. So make sure that you know the expectation, and ask questions so you're able to do those, and just communicate as much as often with your PI and your graduate student. Your graduate student mentor is going to be your best friend.
Absolutely. And not to harp on this, but let me harp on this. On the communication side, something to be very mindful of is that the communications you send through company tools, so email, Slack, Zoom, anywhere else, does not belong to you. It belongs to the company. So there is no such thing as privacy when it comes to communications that you send on company property. So whatever you send can be discovered. So don't send anything that you don't want discovered. So as I said, if your mom would be embarrassed to read it, don't send it. Certainly not on company properties or company resources. And on that note, resources, there's lots of great resources out there, a million emails or a million websites you can find tips on making your having a successful internship. Our Career Center has a great page on internship tips. USA Today has an interesting article by the ex-CFO, I believe, of eBay, has a really good tips for that kind of address these things that we just talked about. The Handshake blog, there's a Handshake blog about internships, some etiquette tips, maximizing your summer research experience through reviewfinder.com. So if you're doing research, that's a great opportunity to get a sense on how to make your research experience successful. So take advantage of these tips and find others out there that there's lots of. And with that, let's open it up to some questions. Tiffany, any good questions we have out there?
Okay, we do have a good question. So we've been talking a lot about evaluation. So we have a question. How do you start the conversation about what performance criteria will be used to evaluate you?
That's something you should keep in mind about all this, is keep it simple. So if you're curious about the criteria that you'll use for performance evaluation, ask what the performance criteria will be for evaluation. So keep it straightforward. Don't overthink these questions and the things you need to know. So they'll very likely tell you up front, but not necessarily. So make sure you ask your manager, is the intention, and literally you can just say this, is the intention of this internship for, to get a return offer at the end? And if so, and it says yes, so what's the criteria for evaluating whether I get a return offer or not? It's as simple as that. And they'll tell you, well, here's our official process, our official list. Most companies have an official process, so they'll tell you up front. But if they don't, keep it simple and ask exactly what you just asked. What is the criteria for a return offer? And they'll tell you.
We have another question, and this question actually is not unique to a virtual program, and it's an excellent question. The question is, how does one handle a non-communicative, non-responsive mentor manager remotely?
That is a great question. So, and I think that, again, a lot of these apply virtual or not. So if you find yourself with a non-communicative mentor, and let's take that one first, address that with your manager. Both your manager or HR, your recruiter who's been working with you through the process of getting you on board, and let them know that your recruiter, your mentors has not been communicative. So if you've emailed X amount of times and you haven't heard anything, let them know, and they'll either find you a different one, or reach out to them to see maybe they lost the email or who knows. But let them know. Let both your manager and the recruiting team. If it's your manager that's uncommunicative, Tiffany?
Oh, I was going to say, and on the REU side, to be honest, even in person, although it might change a little bit, but generally speaking, you will talk more with your grad mentor. I've had students tell me, well, my PI, like I've only met with them 3 times. But you'd be very surprised because the grad students, those are the eyes and ears. So again, the grad student is your best friend. Or in the terms of, if you're doing a national lab, the research scientist that you're working with.
Right. And I was going to say, in terms of if your manager is uncommunicative, which also can happen, let HR know. So let your recruiter know that this is the situation. So if you find yourself, you arrive on day one, or you log in on day one, and there's no manager, your manager is minimally communicative, let your recruiter know that this is going on. And start working the process of finding perhaps another manager, or perhaps understanding what's going on, other projects you may work on. So, but the key is your recruiter. Let the recruiter know if it's that fundamentally wrong, or that it's lacking at that level, to let the recruiter know that something is going on with your manager, so they can address it quickly.
We have another question. How do we find other interns?
There should be the recruiters and the recruiting team, the HR team. There should be an intern manager and most large companies have an intern manager. I had a team of them managing my programs previously, and they manage all the interns, all the activities for interns, remotely or not. And so they should be able to connect you with other interns, and in particular in this context, this virtual context, they should be reaching out to you to let you know who the other interns are, through various tools. So whatever either internal tools that a company might have, either Slack, or other avenues externally. So Facebook or other whatever the cool thing is nowadays, to get you all connected. But again, ask your recruiter if how you'll be connected to other interns, and now, not necessarily to to start, but now, because they should be able to be managing that process.
And similarly with the RU programs, whomever you've been corresponding with, the program director, they can tell you. Usually it's about maybe 5 to 10 other students, usually from other schools. They'll be able to tell you and reach out to those students as well. Okay, another question we have is it a problem to not talk much to your manager if you're talking more to your mentor?
I'm not sure what talking more means. I assume that you mean meeting more with the mentor than your manager. No, that's perfectly okay. And in fact, I think Tiffany alluded to this. You generally will be speaking with your mentor probably more than your manager. The manager generally will lay out your goals, lay out your summer, and address your development, any challenges and training and so forth, and sort of the day-to-day questions you may have, day-to-day sort of operations, is more likely to be your mentor that you'll be working with. So no, it's not unusual that you would work with your mentor far more closely or more often than your manager. So that is not unusual at all. But some managers do like to be in touch with their interns quite a bit, so that's okay too. But don't be surprised if you do find yourself engaging more with your mentor than your manager.
Well, this is a good one. How do I differentiate between good failure and bad failure?
That's a great question. I would say a good failure is one where you were very intentional and deliberate in trying to achieve a goal, to achieve a result, and it didn't work. And you were, very thoughtful and methodical, collaborative. You work with others, you got input, insights, and it just didn't work. Versus slapping something together with no plan, no insights, no methodology. You just, and it's pretty obvious. You could tell which is the two. And if you're haphazard about it and it fails, that's a bad fail. So I think if you demonstrate that you've been thoughtful and methodical, if you follow the engineering methodology of input, assumptions, methodology, testing, and you arrive at a place where the results weren't what you thought, that's okay. If you just sort of threw it together and there's no process to follow, that would be more of a bad failure, I would say.
Okay, another question. Is it possible to receive a return offer for the virtual internship I'm participating in?
Is it possible? Yes, absolutely. So I assume you mean that you.
So I guess they're interning virtually this summer. Would it be possible for them to get a return offer?
Yeah, absolutely. That's. I don't think it changes. Well, I should say, I'll give you the caveat that this is a whole new world, and one that even I wasn't. We were not familiar with this, the virtual internship world. So, everybody's learning as we go. But assuming that the internships are still, or companies are still having them intending to return, to convert to full-time or return offers, then yeah, absolutely. I think just because it's virtual doesn't mean that they're not intending to bring you back.
Okay, another question. How much of my internship would be learning new things versus applying my skills? I'm afraid I will be expected to apply lots of concepts that I haven't learned yet.
I would say you'd be surprised how much of your internship is learning new skills. If there's one thing that Berkeley or your college education, in fact, and particularly being a Berkeley engineer teaches you, and the one skill that you really leverage when you leave is learning new skills. And so it's very likely that the second you walk into an environment, you'll be learning new languages, new tools, new processes that aren't necessarily what you've learned so far. So it could well be, and it very well be that you'll be learning new things, not necessarily applying the things you've learned. And ideally, you want to balance those two. But your professional life is really about learning. You'll be learning from here on out. So don't expect to learn new tools and apply them right away, not necessarily applying only what you've learned so far.
Okay, question from Xavier Balderas. Xavier says, what are tips for working collaboratively in an online environment? Are there tools you recommend or processes to follow?
There's companies have this, and particularly in the tech world, companies have this pretty well worked out. So I should say a lot of companies have the virtual world pretty well, worked out, where most of the processes and the work is done through remote and dispersed teams. So there are tools already out there that most companies use. Slack, Zoom, of course, is the latest, greatest. And internally, companies have lots of tools for remote teams. The whole Jira suite from Atlassian, they have an entire set of tools for remote virtual teams. So there's lots of tools out there. But ultimately, it's about bringing the people together that you need to work with and understanding, who is on your team, and either bringing them together yourself or making sure that you're part of the team that's already built in to work together. So it's really more about ensuring that you're part of the conversations in whatever tool they currently use. So, and if there isn't such a thing, that you make sure that you bring them together through whatever tools are either favored or preferred by the company, or that you like that they're open to use.
Another question, is it rude to ask how the company is handling the COVID-related known layoffs and if they will be projected into the future?
I would say you probably don't want to ask that like on day one, but I don't think it's unfair to ask at some point. That's obviously a question on everyone's mind, and I think what we're trying to, and I think companies aren't trying to, to run from the situation and pretend that all is well. So no, I don't think it's rude to ask. Obviously, ask it, in a positive, professional way. But no, I think it's something that we're all wondering. So it's okay to ask. They may not know, but it's okay to ask.
Another question, why is it important to post on LinkedIn? Is it for your benefit or for others?
It's important to post when the post is about helping others. When your post is to teach something or to share insights that others can benefit from. If your post is, look at me, I'm a company X now, and that's it, it's nice. And it does help your visibility. But if your post is, look at me, I'm a company X, and I did it and I recommend that you follow this process because it worked for me, that's different, right? Or if you learned a tool, some new tool that you think is really useful for solving some particular type of coding problem. Again, being mindful of confidentiality questions, that's okay. So make your posts useful to others, not just about, look at me kind of a approach. But it's not mandatory. You don't have to post on LinkedIn. So don't think that it's a mandatory thing. But a lot of people do, and many professionals do share, and in particular interns do share their experience.
Okay.
Maybe a couple more.
Yeah. How exactly do you get a return offer? Do you ask for it after the internship?
Well, as I said, if you go into the internship knowing that the purpose of the internship is to get an offer, somewhere along the way, in particular towards the end, they'll start working with you on your performance evaluation and how that evaluation translates into an offer. So if you've achieved whatever rating, let's say there's 5 ratings, and if you achieve a 4 or 5, it translates to an offer. That's what you get. But that's why I said at no upfront, what is the process for a return offer if the intention for the internship is a return offer? So that at the end, it's not a surprise, it's not an awkward conversation, it's just part of the process that the evaluation will lead to an offer. Very likely they'll give you the offer, and this, up until last summer, in normal circumstances, companies were giving offers, before you left. I know that the companies I was at, we made it a point to give offers at least at best before you left or immediately after, so within a week or two of leaving. In this environment, that may not be the case. It might take a little longer, given challenges around headcount and budget, but it should be part of the process of performance evaluation leading to a return offer.
Another question, how are industry internships different from RUs in terms of what is expected? Again, professionalism, communication, asking questions. In the case of an REU, obviously, your end result is not going to be a full-time job offer, but if you're interested in doing graduate school, then likely it's going to be you're looking for a letter of recommendation from your PI and perhaps a admission into that PhD program or a different PhD program. If you list that REU on your resume and are applying to grad schools and do not have a letter of recommendation, that's a huge red flag. So in terms of like all the tips that we gave, same thing, professionalism, interest, curiosity, initiative, responsibility, take that seriously. And I always say undercommit and over deliver. And I think that this summer is really a very unique opportunity for all of you. And I have the utmost amount of faith that you're going to make this a phenomenal experience. And any company or research lab that has you is very, very lucky.
Okay. So with that, I know we have lots of other questions there. We're happy to answer. We'll answer them separately. I think we'll do that and post them. But we do, in the interest of time, want to move on to our last poll. And we want to ask you, those of you that are still with us, was this workshop successful? So I'll put up the last poll. And of course, if the answer is no, you can go ahead and dial off. But let us know, was the workshop successful? Okay, we'll give you a few more seconds. We're at 94%. Okay. All right, thank you. Sounds like it's 95% of you said yes. I'll just share so I'm not lying. 95% of you said yes, and 5% said no. So we'll try to do better next time for those of you that said no, but we appreciate those of you that, that found it useful. Sharing. Okay. So with that, be yourselves. Go out there and be yourselves. Bring your passion, your enthusiasm. Well, I guess don't go out there. You'll be at home. But from home, show your enthusiasm, your passion, your commitment to learning, to contributing, to working with others. You will be just fine. If you have any questions through the summer, please come see us. Tiffany, myself, any one of us in ESS, the team in the Career Center, we're happy to answer any questions. If you come across some unique situations or things that you just don't know how to answer, and you feel awkward asking the HR team or anyone in the company, more than happy to answer. I'm not going anywhere, so I'll be happy to answer questions. So with that, I want to thank Tiffany as well for being our amazing co-facilitator. Laura, who you don't see, but she's in the background, who helped put all the mechanics together for this. Again, thank you. As I said, it's being recorded, and we'll send a note of where you can find the recording. And with that, thank you, and have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you may be. Go Bears.